to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle. I'm joined today by defense reporter Mike Brest. Mike, there have been new developments in terms of the U.S. role in the war between Russia and Ukraine. Talk a little bit about what we might be doing to help Ukraine.
So there are two big things that have come out over the last week or so. The first is it's been reported, now the administration hasn't announced it yet, but it's been reported that the U.S. is going to provide Ukraine with the Patriot Missile Defense System. Now this is one of the most sophisticated air defense systems the U.S. has. They are very large, they're hard to transport, they require dozens of service members to operate even one of them. It requires months of training. And so while Ukraine has asked for a Patriot Missile Defense System for weeks and months now, the fact that the U.S. has, it appears, given into this request now at this point is a big deal, both in terms of the commitment and the training that it takes to get Ukrainians up to speed on how to actually use this and to get it in theater, in addition to the message it sends to the Russians. We've heard both the Russian Foreign Ministry and the Russian Embassy here in D.C. already come out and say that should the U.S. go through with this plan, there would be how they called there would be consequences, they said. Now they weren't very clear in what what that would look like.
Sure.
But at the same time, it was a little bit of a chilling message that they also accused the U.S. of escalating the war and getting more involved in the war, and that's something for a large majority of the war the Biden administration has been very adamantly against.
Mm-hmm. And that's why the Biden administration has hesitated up to this point to give them the Patriot defense system.
Absolutely. And we also heard this week that the U.S. is going to sort of expand the training that they do of Ukrainian service members, specifically in Germany. And so with this expansion, the U.S. will now train roughly 500 Ukrainian soldiers every month once they reach the capacity, maximum capacity of these trainings. And so while they had been doing some training during the war, this is really actually just sort of restarting of the training the U.S. National Guard has been conducting in Ukraine from 2014 up until really early this year, when the administration and the Pentagon decided to pull those troops out when it looked like a Russian invasion was inevitable. And so it really is getting back to those old levels, and we'll see how quickly they can get up and running on this and this expansion, but this could be another turning point in the war.
So, the United States has been pretty active in training Ukrainians, usually in a third country, not really being involved in theater. But they've tried, in terms of whatever materials and ammunition and aid that they've given to Ukraine, to make a distinction between defensive and offensive weaponry. Is there anyone saying, when you're reporting, that there's a risk that this will be perceived by the Russians as something different than what we've been doing before?
So it's considered an escalation, but at the same time, this is a defensive system, right. A Patriot air defense system. Literally, the point of this system is that when Russia is going through these, almost systematic attacks against Ukraine's energy infrastructure that we've seen cause blackouts for millions of Ukrainians, people going hungry without heat, without running water in the dead of winter right now.
Right.
And so as these rockets rain down on cities, the Patriot defense system, the rockets within the system will be able to intercept, Russian rockets at a safe distance away from these heavily populated areas, and should be able to detonate them, in the air in a safe space. Right. And so these weapons, while it could be perceived as an escalation in terms of the sophistication, they really are sort of a defensive type of system.
And it's a very familiar form of weaponry to Americans, because we've been using Patriot missiles really since the first Iraq War, the Persian Gulf War, 30 years ago. So people have been used to watching this technology in use on cable television and seen it used against American adversaries before.
Absolutely. However, the difference is a lot of times, specifically when the U.S. is providing them to other countries, they're not actually putting them, in a war zone. They're putting them, most recently, they, lend one to Poland, which is on, the NATO front of the war. And so that was an example where it wasn't necessarily being put in a war zone, but was putting on a NATO, border. And so by providing it to Ukraine, should they go through with this, it does raise the stakes, especially because one of the things the U.S. absolutely wants to avoid is this falling into Russian hands.
Right. And so the counter-argument to the idea that this may be escalatory is that what the Russians are doing to Ukrainian power supplies, the energy grid, is itself a form of escalation of the war.
Absolutely. We've heard from a number of people in this, another camp that says the U.S. needs to do more because Russia is getting more brazen with their attacks. They are going after, Ukraine's energy infrastructure. We saw earlier this month the administration agreed to, another aid package for millions of dollars as they work to, about $50 million, as they work to recover and fix their energy infrastructure right now in the dead of winter as we get further into it. And so there really is a group that says the U.S. needs to not only be providing aid to help them get their electrical grid back online and fully running, but that the U.S. needs to do more to stop these attacks from happening.
Thank you, Mike. You can read Mike and the rest of our national security team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.